Welcome to Lesson 6-7. Today we're going to be talking about finding percents mentally. So some of it we're actually going to do some writing and everything, but basically what we want to do is find the quickest way to find percents. So that this is actually a very practical lesson, something when you're finding a tip for a restaurant, things like that, this is actually useful. So let's really pay attention and listen to what we need to learn for this lesson. So in this first top portion, what I did was write down some percentages that you need to start committing to memory. Because sometimes, with the examples that we're going to do, it's going to be a lot easier to find a percent if you know the corresponding fraction that goes along with it. So things like that are going to help you simplify and to be able to figure out what the percents are. So make sure that you copy down all of these. I will be giving you some of those on your quizzes and tests, especially these. But try to commit them to memory as much as possible because it's a lot easier when it's you just know it instead of having to look it up. So committing these to memory will help you a lot. Now, there are three main methods that you can use to estimate percents. So the first one has to do with using the fractions or using the fraction equivalents like these up here. Now, when you would use this is basically when the percent is close to a common percent. So if it's something close to 30%, so if it's like 28, you can round it up to 30% and use this fraction to help you find the percentage of it. If it's 11%, then you can use your 10% fraction, which is 1/10, to be able to figure out the percent of it. So sometimes that estimating can help just make things a little quicker and just things that you've already memorized, just put them in practice. So the first one is the fraction. Now an example of this would look like, what is 22% of 242? Now this is kind of how it works, so you might need to rewind this section and listen to me say all this again, and that's okay, because I really want you to get a firm grasp about this. So 22% of 242. The first thing you would do is kind of look at the 22% and say, oh, well that's about close to 20%. And then you're going to look at your 242 and say, well, it's around about close to 250. So if I find 20% of 250, it's the same thing of doing 1/5 times 250. Now you might be thinking, well, why did we even bother about rounding this 242 to 250? Now the reason why we did that is because it's pretty close so that we can simplify easily. So if you did 1/5 times 250, you'll divide a 5 out and then you'll have your answer, which is 50%. So that is one way of doing it. Another way of finding percents quickly is by using the 1% method. So with this method, we are going to be finding 1% of everything, and then using the fraction percents. Now this is really useful when the percent is less than 1. Like for example, if you had 1/6% of 613. So basically, see how this fraction percent is less than 1%? This is when you would use this method. So first of all, you'd figure out what's 1% of 613, which means you move basically the decimal 2 places to the left, just as if you were changing the 613 to a decimal from a percent. So it would be about 6. So 1% of 613 is about 6. And then you would think, so 1/6 of 6 would give you 1, because you would cross cancel that 6 out and you'd be left with 1. So basically, first you find 1% of the number, and then you just multiply the fraction percent to the number, the 1%. I know it sounds kind of confusing, but maybe if you watch it several times and once we do some examples, it's going to settle in, so don't freak out. The last method is by using the meaning of the percent. So this is just basically, there are certain times when really understanding what a percent is, it will help you learn it a little bit quicker. So like if it says use this method when the percent especially is greater than 100. You can use it in different examples, but this is definitely when it's helpful. So for example, if it says 222% of 77. Okay, so the first thing you would have to think through is that, well, 222% is about 220 for every 100. So that means for every 100 people or every 100 things, you're going to have 220 for every 100. And then you think, okay, well, 220% is about 22 over 10 once you simplify it down, 220 over 100, and you simplify it down. And then you're going to get, estimate that, well, if I'm looking at the number 77, you can estimate that 77 is about 8 tens, or 80. So if you take round 77 to 80, then you say, well, that's about 8 tens. So if you're saying for every 100, or, sorry, 220 for every 100, you made that a fraction and simplify it down to 22 over 10, then that means, and we said that 77 is about 8 tens, we'd have 22, which is about 22 over 10. 22 times 8 would give you about 176. I know that last method is really confusing, but let's just go ahead and try to think through that when we do some examples, okay? So let's go ahead and trial and error. Alright, let's go ahead and try to plug through and try to solve some of these problems. And again, please watch it again, the beginning part or this part again, just so that you can start seeing it happen over and over to get it in your mind a little bit. So first of all, let's think of 40% of 50. Now in order to do this, 40% is one of those fraction equivalents problems that I asked you to try to memorize. And so you can also look at in your book for now or in your notes to kind of reference. So basically 40% is 2/5. So if we have 40% or 2/5 of 50, because remember of means multiplication, we can go ahead and simplify and solve. So if I divide a 5 out of here, I'm going to get 1, and if I divide a 5 out of here, I'm going to get 10. So we do 2 times 10 and we're going to get 20. So 40% of 50 is 20. And also you can kind of think that 40% is kind of close to half. So we say, well, is 20 close to half of 50? Yes. So that kind of shows us that we have a reasonable answer. So that going back and checking might really help you, especially if you're a little bit confused on this lesson. It can guide you to see if you are right or if you're off track. So let's go ahead and look at number 2. It says 30% of 70. So 30% is also one of those percents that I asked you to memorize the fraction equivalent. So 30% is 3/10, and then we said of 70. So now let's go ahead and cross cancel, and then we'll be able to solve. So if we divide a 10 out of here, we'll get 1. 70 divided by 10 is going to give you 7. Then we do 3 times 7, which is going to give you 21. All right? And then you go ahead and think, well, is 21, oh sorry, it's not 21%, it's just 21. So if we have 21 is, think about it, does it sound like that is about 30% of 70? So less than half, and I would say, yeah, it sounds pretty close. So let's go ahead and look at 3. This is 62 1/2 of 64. So anytime you get one of those ones with a 62 1/2 or something like that, I would go ahead and check on the cheat sheet to see if there is one. Because even though it doesn't necessarily look like it's one of those fractions that you'll memorize, it actually is. This one is 5/8. So if we have 5/8 of 64, we can go ahead and cross cancel. So 8 divided by 8 gives you 1. 64 divided by 8 gives you 8. And then we're going to multiply across. So 5 times 8 is going to give you 40. And you can also think that 62% is close to like 65%, and 65% is over half. So it's 40 over half of 64, and that's yes. So it kind of shows you that it is close to half, so we have a reasonable answer, so I'm probably right, which in this case we are. Number 4, we're going to start using some of those methods now. So this one's going to come into play. So 62% of 50. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and look at 92% and go ahead and round it to 90%, which is one of those fractions that you need to memorize, which is 9/10. So we're going to have 9/10 times 50. So now let's go ahead and simplify. So let's divide 10 divided by 10 gives me 1. 50 divided by 10 gives me 5. And then we do 9 times 5, and we're going to get 45. Sorry, I put another percent up here. I keep putting the percents, but it's not percents that we're talking about. We're talking about numbers of that. Okay, so we have 45 is about 92% of 50. And also think about it, 92 is close to 100, so it should be pretty close to 50, and 45 is close to 50. So that shows us that our answer is reasonable. Number 5, we have 75% of 84. In this case, 75 is one of those ones that you can easily memorize, which is 3/4. So if we have 3/4 of 84, we can go ahead and simplify and solve. So 4 divided by 4 gives you 1. 84 divided by 4 gives you 21. And so 3 times 21, you'll have 3 times 1, which gives you 3. And then 3 times 2, which gives you 6. So it's about 63. And you can also think that 75% is kind of close to 100%, and so 63 should be close to 84, and it is. All right, let's go ahead and look at number 6. It says 63% of 205. So this time, since our number is over 100, we're going to go ahead and try to use our 1% method. So the first step in the 1% method is finding 1% of 205. So basically, finding 1%, it moves our decimal 2 places to the left. So we know that 1% of 205 is about 2. So we're going to use the number 2. And also we're thinking 63% of that number. So if we have 63 times 2 will be what we'll do to solve this problem. So if we do 2 times 3, we're going to get 6. And then if we do 2 times 6, we're going to get 12. So 126 is about 63% of 205. And also think, 63 is a little bit over half. So think about, well, what's half of 200? It's 100. So it should be over 100 a little bit. And it is. It's 126. So that is one method that you can use to solve that problem. Number 7, it says 88% of 91. So what we're going to do is kind of do an estimating so that we can estimate a little bit. So let's go ahead and try, we're going to try the understanding the percents method, the last method. Okay? So what I'm going to do first of all is I see that 88% is close to 90%. So I'm going to estimate this to 90%. And then I'm going to go ahead and estimate 91 to 90. Okay? So now I got to think, 90% is, when you simplify the fraction, you'll have 90 over 100, simplify, you'll have 9 over 10. It's 9 tenths. Okay? And then when we look at 90, that's also 9 tenths. So we're going to take this 9 tenths from this fraction, or from this percent. Then we're going to take 9 tenths from this number, and we're going to multiply them together and get 81. All right? And so you also can think that 88%, you know, that's pretty close to 90%, like we said, which is close to 100%. So it should be really close to 90 or 91. In this case, it is. All right, let's go ahead and look at the last equation. It says, Haley wants to leave a 15% tip for a check of $48.61. So what would be a reasonable amount to tip? Now, obviously, you can see that this, you use it almost every day, anytime you go out to eat or anything like that. So this is very a helpful lesson. So let's go ahead and try to apply it to a situation that you would really run into. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and estimate our bill to about $50. So that's what I'm going to do first. $50, because it's really close, 48 and some change. So let's go ahead, and what I'm going to do is think about, well, what is 15% in fraction form? So we have 15 over 100, and we're going to go ahead and divide by 5, and we're going to get 3 over 20, which is in simplest form. So now I'm going to go ahead and multiply that by 50. So 3 out of 20 of 50. So let's go ahead and simplify. We can divide a 10 out of both. So now we have 2 and 5 instead of 20 and 50. And then we'll do 3 times 5, which gives you 15. And then 15 divided by 2. So we said 3 times 5 is 15. And then we have 15 divided by 2 is going to give you $7.50. So that would be one way that you can go ahead and make some, estimate your tip. Okay? Now, obviously, if this is confusing, just go back and look at it one more time. You can also go in your book. Please look at those examples. They might help you as well, so that we can really formulate and ask some great questions at the beginning of class, and we can start getting this a little bit more clear for you, all right? So good luck on your questions. We'll see what you get tomorrow. All right, you have 6 problems to do for me. Try to use the different methods and make sure that you show all your work so that we can see what you got wrong or what part you missed out of the method so that we can correct it so you can practice it perfectly tomorrow. All right, good luck. We'll see what you get.